So I want to start with a little bit of a reality check. The reality here in Massachusetts is that we already have medical marijuana. Proponents have tried to suggest that this is just like medical marijuana. In fact, we've seen that deceptively displayed in literature that's landed on our doorsteps. But the reality is we already have medical marijuana. The other reality is that we've already decriminalized marijuana. And that's also something that proponents are trying to put out there in an effort to talk about criminal justice reform and racial disparities. Again, a misrepresentation. We have decriminalization. We have medical marijuana. We also, folks, have a situation where if you look at what's happening here in this state, do you know the average age of first use of marijuana in this state is 14? Some say it's even younger. But let's start with 14 for the average age when kids start with marijuana use. The other reality is that the marijuana that is being produced today is at least 6 times more potent than the marijuana produced in the 1970s. Question 4, you see, isn't just about legalization. It's about commercialization. It's about allowing this billion-dollar industry into Massachusetts to promote marijuana use, to increase sales, and to increase profits, and the bottom line for a whole bunch of investors. When you think about marijuana, when you think about the marijuana industry that we've seen develop in places across this country, I'm reminded of big tobacco. Their first job, make no mistake about it, is to make money. They will always put profits over people. Now, health leaders will tell you that as the perception of harm goes down, because people think and this becomes legal, use is only going to go up, particularly use by young people. I hope every voter in this state takes a moment to watch the 60 Minutes piece that ran this past Sunday. Now, proponents are going to tell you that it's better to just regulate all of this. I have a message for voters on that issue. You know, you as voters have only control of one thing, and that is your vote on Tuesday. Proponents will say, just pass this and leave it to the legislature to sort out all that needs to be sorted out in the time ahead. Well, we can't count on that sort of leap of faith. And I want you to know that what is proposed, folks, is highly dangerous. Do you realize that what's proposed has no potency limits? You can sell marijuana with THC limits of no end, of no limit. No potency limits on edibles, no packaging restrictions, no advertising protections other than those not specifically targeting people under 21, no limits on the number of pot shops, and nothing to address drugged driving. We've already seen instances of drug driving impairment in this state, and by the way, we don't have a way to test for that.
For the Attorney General, you said you didn't sound very confident in the legislature's ability to change the law if it's passed by a referendum. Didn't really sound like a vote of confidence from you.
Oh, I have a great degree of confidence in the legislature. That was not my point. My point was this is an industry that says pass this. They know full well that what they propose creates all sorts of issues. Issues for law enforcement, issues for health care, issues when it comes to financial services and the like. The fact that this isn't even legal under federal law, what that means for banking. They realize that what they have done is propose something that's going to wreak potentially all sorts of havoc in so many ways. And their response is, well, that's fine. Let's just give it to the legislature to sort out. Let's not burden the legislature with a problem that they create. And, I think what we've heard is the point about seeing how this is already playing out in other states. Look at the reality there. Don't just folks, voters out there, look at the reality of what's happening. Understand what's happening in Washington, in Colorado. Understand what's happening with ER admissions and with THC levels in infants and effects on pets. Look at what's happening with first responders. That's the reality. And so, I think it's unfair for this industry to come in and act in a way that is really irresponsible. And to the point that I was making about potency, they take the position that there's no potency limit right now in the bill, in the ballot petition. Now, they said last night that effectively what they're saying, if you listen to them, they say, we'll work and agree insofar as the limits aren't too high. Well, that's letting them define it, and that's just wrong. And what we've seen, more importantly, because I always think it's more important to actually not just listen to what people say, but to look at what they've actually done. What they've actually done in Colorado is fight hard the legislature at every single turn on any efforts to regulate, to rein in, to take appropriate action for the health and safety and welfare of citizens in Colorado. And I don't expect their playbook to be any different here in Massachusetts. That's why voters need to act. That's why on Tuesday they need to vote no.
Attorney General, they actually don't want the legislature to weigh in. They want, if it's passed, for it to go through the process. It's actually some of the legislators that have talked about tweaking it if it's passed. Speaker DeLeo, for instance, talked about hiking the tax rate. Do you think there's a possibility, if it passes, that the legislature could put up so many obstacles that it wouldn't be workable?
Well, I leave it to my terrific colleagues to speak to this issue, but I need to be candid with you. Right now, as we look across this state, I think their time and investment and energy should be focused on our continuing efforts around addressing the very real issues of mental health and substance use and the opioid crisis. I think we should be thinking about what we need to do to continue to be a leading state when it comes to the delivery of health services, focused on, look at the important matters before us around energy, around infrastructure, around education. This is where I, as a citizen, want the investment of time and resources and attention. And unfortunately, we have a situation where this is a billion-dollar industry that doesn't care about those things and is just attempting to move forward with something that suits their bottom line and will line the pockets of their investors.
That being said, city officials in Boston have kind of raised concerns about, they kind of mentioned a new combat zone if you have a bunch of pot shops that are sort of clustered together. Is that something you feel that should be addressed by the city or the legislature if this passes, sort of spreading these out? Because there could be up to 15 in Boston alone allowed.
I think that's just one of any number of examples of situations where tremendous work is going to be created for local municipalities, for the state. All of that is true. But today, I think what is really the focus and what needs to be the focus in the minds of voters, because they may not care about or appreciate any of that. What they need to care about, I think what every parent in the state needs to care about, is the fact that they have a decision to make that's going to directly impact their kids' welfare and well-being. And if they need to know more about that, they just need to look to Colorado and Washington State and talk to their doctor and talk to these healthcare professionals about this issue if they have any questions. That's what this is about.
On the subject of healthcare costs, wouldn't this essentially take something that is now you need to go to a doctor, get a recommendation, and then go to a medical marijuana dispensary, but if this passes, you could just go down the street to, the cannabis store at the strip mall and buy essentially the same product without visiting the doctor? Wouldn't that lower healthcare costs?
No, medical marijuana needs to be dispensed by a practitioner for a specific purpose at a specific potency for a specific reason. You have to monitor the effects. You may have to titrate what the patient's taking. You may have to look for adverse consequences. So if people are just saying, oh, I'll try to self-medicate and go buy these high-potency brownies, they may be causing themselves extreme harm. So actually, I think it would have the opposite effect. And more worrisome than the small number of people who use medical marijuana will be the thousands upon thousands upon thousands who will use edibles, who will accidentally ingest edibles, or who will inappropriately use them and end up in the ERs. We didn't even mention car accidents and fatalities, which have increased in Colorado too. So the cost of the healthcare system will burgeon way above anything to do with the very small part of the market that's medical marijuana.
Sorry, that's it. Thank you. We can do more questions after, I apologize, but I know some of them have to leave right away. Jack, you can grab me after if you want.
All right.